Welcome to the UWS Career Service and Careers event. We are excited to have Uteach today. Eva Martin from Uteach agency who helps teachers to find work in Scotland, England, and internationally as well. So before we begin, if you have any questions, we will have question and answer session at the end of the presentation. So we have Eva talking first, and then we have a teacher joining us around 1 o'clock to talk about their experience. And then you can, if you have any questions, you can ask away. And we appreciate that you are joining us here today from different parts of the country, from England, Scotland, and I don't think there's anybody else from abroad yet, but some of you will probably be going abroad as well to work. So it's really, really exciting times. So welcome, Eva, and thanks very much. And I'll give you the screen so you can screen share and introduce yourself.
Great, thank you very much. So thank you very much, Honor, for letting me come on here today. I really love working with UWS, being a student myself there, absolutely, just love the opportunity to come on and talk to you all. And I just also want to wish you all a happy Teachers' Day, happy World Teachers' Day. I'm just going to talk to you a bit about us, and I'll do my presentation. Like Honor said, I'll speak for a bit. I'll try and not ramble on too much. I'm a bit guilty of that. So I'll try and, get finished for about 1 o'clock, and then we have teacher coming on who, like that, as Anna said, will come on, answer any questions that you have. You can ask me any questions as well. And while we're going through the presentation, if you do have any questions that you want to ask me during it, you can also just, put your mic off and just shout out to me. I don't mind doing that at all. So I am just going to share my screen just now. I will just take my camera off just because I'll probably end up distracting myself if I can see myself. So I will turn my camera off while I'm sharing. Okay, so can everybody see this all right? Is that all good?
Yes, we can see. Yeah, if you put on the presentation mode, then great.
Great. So I'm just going to start off by telling you, so that's me, Eva Martin. I'm the recruitment coordinator at Uteach. And just going to start off by telling you just a bit about us. So who are we? So we're established 20 years ago. We're a Scottish company. We're actually, I've seen a lot of you said there that we were in the Lanarkshire campus. We're actually based in Coatbridge. We're just at the Strathclyde Business Park, so we're very local to those campuses, but of course we work internationally as well. As I say, we've got schools in Scotland, England, and internationally, so Abu Dhabi and Dubai and countries in the UAE. We work across both sectors, so primary and secondary, and our service is free to teachers. It's the schools that pay us. You don't have to give anything from any of our support or anything like that. We do offer training and support. So we do have a trainer, Caroline, who was a head teacher in Scotland for over 10 years. She now conducts group sessions, so both, CPD during the teachers' careers, and then also for a lot of overseas teachers. So she does a lot of one-to-one and group sessions with those teachers on, behaviour management strategies, safeguarding policies, different things like that. So you'll also be able to be incorporated into that training and support sessions as well. We also do have a sister company. I don't know if any of you have heard of it. It's Scottish Online Lessons. So it's only been established for about 18 months just now. So it is still new. We're still trying to get out there. But it's full lesson videos based on the UK curriculum, targeted, at the Scottish population, and it's full lessons from real teachers in Scotland. They're going through lessons. It's really good for any children who've got anxiety or anything like that, and they're working from home, and they want to learn a bit more support. And those lessons are really good if you're not feeling that comfortable in the UK curriculum, because we'll give you free access to that, and you can use that to, study some lessons and things too, or get some ideas for activities. Okay, so here's just an overview of today's presentation. So I'm going to start us off by talking about, writing CVs and application forms. So in England, the schools expect a CV, whereas in Scotland, it is the application form. So I'll be talking a bit about both and showing you some examples. I'll also be doing a bit of interview practice. So I've got some mock questions to ask, and the answers will be displayed on here as well. And then I'm going to be talking about what head teachers are looking for in a successful candidate, you know, things that you should be doing, things that you shouldn't be doing. We'll also be talking about what questions you're likely to be asked. What we actually do is, you know, during the summer months, we don't have too much to do because the schools are closed. So we reach out to the head teachers and we say, you know, what are some of the most common questions that you ask in interviews? Are these questions that we have still relevant? Is there anything that you would change in there? Is there anything that you would like to add? And then we look at the questions that we have and we kind of remodel them to suit the most relevant questions and up-to-date questions. And before you would go for interview, we would share those mock questions with you that have answers so that you can help prepare a bit better as well. And as I said, we'll be showing you how to answer these questions too. So here's just about the, you know, sectors that we work in. So Scotland versus around the world. So this is our recruitment process. So for Scotland, you complete an application form. It usually will be over My Job Scotland or to your local council or local authority. There's not very many agencies in Scotland. We're actually one of the only teacher agencies that operates in Scotland. The majority of it is done over TESS or My Job Scotland or things like that, which you may already be familiar with. Whereas in England, they do require a CV. So you'll all probably already have a CV for any part-time jobs, anything like that you've been doing. So that is what the schools in England look for. And again, I will be going over an example of that. So don't worry if you're not sure what you should be putting into it. I will show you in this presentation. In terms of interviews for Scotland, so the interview will be in person with the head teacher. It will just be very similar to any interviews that you've done before, you know, to be a panel in front of you. Whereas in England, you'll actually be asked to teach a lesson before the interview, and then you'll have a reflective interview afterwards. Term dates in Scotland, you'll maybe know, so it's the 22nd of August straight through to the 30th of June, whereas in England they're a bit later than us, so they're the 5th of September to the 14th of July. And then for the UAE, very similar to England, they do require a CV, but their interview, of course, we're not going to say to you, go fly over to the UAE for your interview. If you are in the UK, it'll just be based on Teams. During that Teams call, they may ask you to teach a lesson. We have seen before that a classroom would be behind the screen and you'd be teaching that lesson to them, similarly to how I am just now, like on a PowerPoint or something, and they'll kind of mark you that way, or it could just be a reflective interview. Working through the UAE, you will be working through the school, and the term dates will kind of be decided by each school. It really depends on the school in which you're employed by. But as I said, you will be working through the school and they can offer quite good packages. That's why the UAE, I think, in recent years is getting more and more popular, because not only do they offer you the job, it's tax-free salary, and they also include the flights and accommodation. And also, if you do have any children, they will also pay for 2 school admissions for your children, because I know, moving over there, the cost of education to put your children can be very expensive. So they do try and, subsidise that, or at least some places do give you it for free to try and convince you to come over. Okay, so starting off then with Scotland. So as I mentioned previously, you're most likely to find your vacancy in My Job Scotland. If you have completed your probation year and you're then looking to find a job in your area, you can go on to that link there. It's just on myjobscotland.gov.uk and just type in your local postcode or the postcode of the area that you want to work in, and that'll display all the jobs around there. And this is why I'm talking about the application forms, because you won't be asked to, submit a CV like you might do on Indeed or something like that. You'll actually be asked to complete an application form. And I will, again, show you later on in this presentation how you would do that and what you should be putting in there. And then step 3 would be you would visit the school for an interview with the head teacher. So similar to what I just spoke about, you wouldn't be teaching a lesson, it would just be a visit and an interview, and then you'd work directly with the school. Okay, and then for England, you would find your job. They also have TESS, so you'd either find it on TESS or you would go through an agency. And like I said at the start of the presentation, it is very uncommon to have teaching agencies in Scotland. We are actually the only one that operates, whereas down in England, it's very, very common for them to have teaching agencies. It's kind of one of the most popular routes that teachers go into teaching. So it's definitely useful going through an agency, especially with the contacts and things like that too, because TES doesn't really get used as often down in England. And then with that, you'll send your CV to the school. Then you'll have a Teams call with the head teacher and the head department. Of course, that's if you're in Scotland, you'll have the Teams call. But if you are already in England and you are close by, you would be invited into the school, kind of missing step 3 and go straight to step 4. So you'd be invited into the school to teach your lesson, have your reflective interview afterwards. And then if you are successful, you would either work through the school or work for the agency that put you into contact with them. So here, I'm just going to go over then the example of the CV. So this is actually the template that we send to all our teachers and that we use before we put any of the teachers forward, because you just want to make sure you're getting all the information in there. And one of the most important things that I do recommend to all our teachers, or to anyone applying for any job really, is to make sure you put a picture of yourself. So that is a picture of me there. That's, almost 2 years ago now. I've put my graduation picture in because, any excuse to show off and things like that, then you should do. So just a nice, happy, smiley picture. You want to make sure, it's a good representation of you. I can't tell you the amount of times that I've sent these to teachers and they send it back and it's just a total deadpan face, no emotion. And you don't really want that. You want to give off kind of your personality and show that you are engaging, because if the head teachers know that they can engage with you, then they know that, you'll be able to engage with the children. So making sure you do put a nice, well-presented picture of yourself in there. And then it also makes you stand out. You think if you've got 5 CVs sitting in front of you and only one's got a picture on it, you're more likely to remember that one and to pick that one up first. So it does kind of make you stand out too. So definitely put a picture on there. And then for your profile, it doesn't have to be too long. It doesn't have to be a full page, just a couple of paragraphs, just talking really about you, your qualifications. Make sure if you are applying for Scotland that you mention about your GTCS registration, because you do actually need that to get an interview. If you don't have that, then they won't even, entertain you for an interview. So definitely make sure you're mentioning that quite early on in your profile. Talk a bit about your teaching styles and why you like being a teacher, and just be honest. Just really say, what you feel and what you think would look good in there. And then, got your education. So here, of course, you would just put down the name of your qualification, where you carried it out, what years, how long it was, things like that. And I've put this in here to draw your attention, because if you are studying in Scotland, it'll be that if you've got, for example, in this instance, so the geography PGDE, this person can only actually teach geography in Scotland. Whereas if this teacher was to, graduate, finish the probation as a geography teacher, and then for whatever reason wanted to move to England or to the UAE, they would then also be able to teach their specialisation. So not just geography, they could also be a humanities teacher or an economics teacher. So Scotland is quite strict in that, but England and the UAE and a lot more relaxed, and you can kind of teach a bit more fluidly. And they do actually kind of convince you to teach more than one subject. It is good because it means that you can possibly have split timetables. You can maybe cover some more teachers and things like that. So that definitely is another option to look at if you are thinking about moving out of Scotland. And then your teaching experience. So in here, you just want to mention your teacher placements that you've done during university, or if you have been a teacher before, of course, putting your experience in here that you've gained over the years. So you want to make sure you're putting the school in so they know whereabouts it was, putting in the duration of your employment. So if it was just your placement, just putting in for the amount of months that you were there. Listing, of course, your key achievements. Want to give here really specific examples of the things that you achieved. You don't want to give, very vague things that doesn't really show much about you. You want to make sure you are being specific and making sure that the things that you do mention in here are things that you can, reflect upon within the interview, because they may ask you about some of the activities that you have listed down in your CV. So make sure that that is all, true, and everything like that you can reflect on. Okay, and then moving on to your second placement. So again, you want to put in as much experience as you've had. If you've had more than one placement, do add it in. And I also just want to highlight here about the age groups. So in the first example, it was ages 12 to 14, whereas in this example, it's 13 to 15. So it's just showing that you've worked with different age groups and you have got experience kind of across the board, as opposed to just working with the one age group. And then there is a section we'd like you to include would be your work experience. So I've just put myself in there as an example, but if you've got any other part-time work that you're carrying out, definitely put that in there. Even if it's not related to teaching, of course, preferably if it is, if you have had any experience as, you know, maybe a teaching coach of horse riding or swimming or things like that, definitely add that in there. But if you haven't, it's all right, you know, just definitely putting in any experience that you have, because it shows there's no gaps in your CV. Schools don't really want to see any gaps. They want to see that you've been proactive, you've been doing, you know, some part-time work and things like that. So don't worry if it isn't related to education. It's absolutely fine to put that in there as well. And then just finishing with your hobbies and interests. So because this is a geography teacher, they kind of have aligned the hobbies and interests with, you know, geography. So the hiking and the camping, different things about, you know, experience. And then also you just want to be a bit true as well. Show a bit of your personality in there. So during my spare time, I like to read and walk my dog. I love talking about my dog. Any opportunity I can get, I will be talking about him. So put something in there about you that you do, you know, really enjoy. Okay, and then moving on to the application form. So this is an example from My Job Scotland. If you actually go on to apply, this is the screenshot of what you will be asked. So of course, it just starts off with your personal information. So just adding in first name, surname, and email address. Now, I just want to highlight the email address section because you need to make sure that going into these jobs that you do have a professional email address. The example that I always give when I'm talking about these sorts of things is when I was at university, well, it was actually at high school at the time, we were applying for university on UCAS and we were doing our personal statements. And my friend put her email address in as iloveonedirection@gmail.com. And I remember the personal support teacher said, you can't have that in, it needs to be a professional email. So that, making sure that your email address is professional, is suitable, because they will really judge you on that. So making sure that it is nothing, you know, crazy or anything like that. And then of course, just finishing the form with putting in the rest of your details. And then they will ask you for the additional information. So are you eligible to work in the UK? Of course, if you are, fantastic. And then if you could be on a student visa, if you are as well, you want to mention that because, you know, you can work on a student visa, but it's only up to 20 hours per week. And then once you've done that, you can convert it to your graduate visa to allow you to work for a further 2 years. But it definitely is worth mentioning that you will need to be working part-time until you do graduate. Okay. And then the position specification questions. So it is asking here for a bit of more information from you. So do note the word count is quite large. You don't have to, you know, go right up to the word count. You'd rather be putting less information in, but making sure it is concise and relevant than making it up to the word count, but it's kind of useless information. So don't feel like you have to use the full word count. I maybe would say half is maybe a good way to go, or just over half, but making sure that what you are putting in is relevant. So the first question, you know, you're talking about your qualities and how you've developed them. Give examples again, making sure you're being really precise about what you've done and how you've learned from what you've done in maybe your placements or in your teaching career to date. So just making sure you are giving precise examples. And then in the second question, you want to go on here, you know, talk about the year groups that you've worked in. So this teacher said first, second and third year. So that's showing the 3 different year groups. If you're a primary teacher, you would mention, you know, the lower school and the upper school. In England, they call it Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. And you want to just maybe put in here as well which year group you like working with the best, but always bearing in mind, of course, you are applying for a job. So if you're applying for a primary 7 position, don't say, you know, I love primary 1s, I only want to work with primary 1s, I don't really like primary 7s. So you just want to make sure that you are saying things that are relative to the position that you're applying for. And then in the last question there, this is when you can really show off, you know, why are you applying for this post? That's what you do want to say, you know, the research that you've done. You want to show off what you've done and how you're enthusiastic you are about the position. So definitely always recommend, you know, reviewing the school website before you apply for a position, so that you can really mention the things that you've found in the school website, and you can, you know, really show off and show them that you are enthusiastic. The example that I always like to use is that we've actually got a primary school down in England who have a swimming pool, and I always think that's a really good thing to mention in an interview, because it does make that school stand out. So just going on and saying, you know, in here, I saw that on your website that you have a swimming pool, be really interested to learn more about that. And then of course, finishing it with, I'd welcome a visit to your school, because that again, you know, shows that you are enthusiastic about the position. And then here it's just asking about your education. So you put in whatever qualification you've got, your subject and your result. Of course, you want to make sure you definitely put your result in there so they know. Some of them can be quite specific about the grade that you received. And then similar to your CV, just asking here about your work history. So this is in here where you would put your teaching experience, be it your, you know, your placements or any experience that you have had, your job title, you know, what department you were in, and your start and finish dates. Then also got your references. So you want to make sure you're putting in here the head teacher of any of the placements that the schools that you carried out your placements at, because it is good. You know, of course, if you've done a part-time job and you want to put your manager down, it's fine, but it's not really relevant. So if they could get a reference from a head teacher who's seen your teaching experience and knows your kind of teaching styles, it's definitely better to put them in as a referee for you. And then moving on to your interview practice. So first things first, you've got your clothing. So you want to make sure you're doing smart office wear. I always say you would rather overdress in a sense of, you know, smart attire, rather overdress than underdress, because if you do start off really smart and you feel like, right, okay, I've been working here for a few months or a few weeks now, and my colleagues are dressing down a bit, feel free to dress down too, but I would always set the standard quite high when you are starting. So smart office wear, you know, no leggings, joggers or jeans, anything like that. And you want to make sure as well you've got smart, sensible shoes for your interview. You don't want to be walking around the school, because they do quite often give you a tour of the school. You don't want to be walking about where your feet are really sore, they're really uncomfortable, and it's all you can think about is you can't wait to get your shoes off. You want to make sure your main focus on that day is the interview and doing well. So definitely making sure you're comfortable is a priority. And then attending the interview. So make sure you know how to get there. And it could be that the school's 5 minutes, 10 minutes from your house. You know how to get there. You drive past it every day, but you just want to make sure that you are doing I always call it a dummy run, so doing a practice trial of driving there, because it could be that maybe you pass it every day at 12 o'clock and it's fine, but your interview's at 9. So it could be rush hour traffic. So it may take longer than what you're expecting it to. So making sure you are doing a dummy run on the time that your interview is planned for, you know, a week or so in advance. Making sure as well that you arrive on time. So I would always recommend maybe 15 minutes before your interview is due to start, but don't enter the school for any more than 10 minutes, because they might not know, you know, where the head teacher is. She might not be available yet. So just don't want to arrive too early. I would say 10 minutes probably is the kind of perfect time to allow yourself to get relaxed and calm down before the interview starts if you are nervous. And then one of the most important things I would say as well is your research on the school. So take a pen and pad with you and write down, you know, the head teacher's name, anybody else who you know is going to be interviewing you, because it could be that you really know the school, you've done research before, but you could just get really nervous on the day of the interview. And when you go in for your interview, your mind could just go totally blank, and you might forget, you know, the head teacher's name or maybe the other interviewers on the panel. So just making sure you do have a wee pad and pen there, just for a bit of security, that, you know, if you forget the names, that they are written in black and white for you. And then also, I should think you should write down any some questions that you want to ask. I do think even if you don't have any questions that spring to mind, try to create questions, not too many. I would maybe say two or three questions is probably quite a good amount. Because it does just show, you know, again, how much you really want the job, that you've went on, you've studied it, it's somewhere that you do want to work, you know the ethos of the school, you know what the school stands for, and just again really showing off the information that you have found in your research. Okay. And then, so what do head teachers look for? So these are some of the, the adjectives that the head teachers would look for. So you've got your enthusiasm, which of course you'll show by the research that you've done in the school and by asking questions. Your confidence, which I know it can be difficult if you are nervous to, lack in confidence, but just try your best to be the best version of yourself and really get your confidence up there. Also, your passion for being a teacher, so talking about your teaching styles, some of the strategies that you implement, that will really show your passion for teaching. And then, of course, being a reflective practitioner as well. Head teachers know that you're likely to make mistakes, and that is normal, but it's just how you would respond to them and how you learn from them going forward that's really crucial, and it is what they're really looking for. Okay, and then just moving on then to some interview questions. So here's some of the questions that we do often see asked in the interviews from the head teachers. So the first one is, tell me about a successful lesson that you have taught. So this is where you really want to make sure you are going into detail on one of the successful lessons that you've taught. So you're talking about the year group, the strategy that you used during teaching, any of the resources that you used, how the students would utilise these, and then including, the progress check activities. I think that's a very important one as well. It could be something as easy as a thumbs up, like thumbs up if you understand this, thumbs in the middle if you're not quite sure, or thumbs down if you're really not getting it. And that just shows how you measure that the lesson was successful. Okay. And then tell me about a lesson that didn't go well. And this is where the kind of reflective practitioner part really comes into play, because it will be, if it is in England, you're doing your interview, you will be teaching a lesson and you will be observed in that lesson. And it could be, we've got teachers working for us who've been here for over 20 years, been teachers for over 30, and even they can have unsuccessful lessons. Sometimes it's fine, it happens, it's normal. It's just how you adapt and how you move on from that. So in this question, you just really want to make sure that you are acknowledging any of the things that went wrong. If you're having an observation and maybe the PowerPoint stops working, or you misspell something on the board, or anything it could be, if you come out and you're doing that reflective interview with the head teacher and you say, oh, that was a perfect lesson, that was the best thing, I think then the head teacher is going to be thinking, really, is that the standard? Whereas if you come out and you say, I had an issue with the PowerPoint, or I had an issue doing this, but I know how I can do moving forward to make sure that doesn't happen again, then they know, okay, she made a mistake or he made a mistake, absolutely fine. And they know that you're able to move on from that and really reflect and recognise when something hasn't went right. And then one of the other questions is, what is your approach to discipline? So here's just an example. So they're mentioning here about the behaviour management policy, which I definitely think is crucial as well before going to your interview. So when you are doing your research on the school website, all of the schools will have posted the most important policies. So, the behaviour management policies, the safeguarding policies, anything like that, you should really be reviewing before your interview and like that, referring to it, showing off again, showing that you've done your research. And then, of course, positive reinforcement is always good. So one of the examples I always use as well is it could be something as easy as, post-it notes. So for a learner who does something well or does something correct, hands their homework in on time, they would get a post-it note. If, the homework isn't handed in, a post-it note would be taken off. And then at the end of the week, the learners with the most post-it notes would get a prize, a sweetie or something like that. We also used to have golden time. We were at school and, it was just a nice incentive for the kids. So it's always positive reinforcement instead of, really going in the discipline. And then just talking again about, being a positive role model and just making sure you do have specific examples, like that example I gave there in the post-it note. They do want to really get out of you, okay, what would you do in this situation? How would you overcome that? So making sure you do have some examples in your head in case they do ask you. Okay, and then this is another question that we're seeing is getting asked a lot more as well regarding the classroom expectations of you. So this is really what you expect of the learners in your classroom, really what kind of rules that you have in regards to behaviour. So the question that usually is asked is, a head teacher will say, if I was to walk into your classroom during a lesson, what would I see? And this is the kind of answer they're looking for you to give. So, students using the whole school book policy, green pen for the sports work, updating grade tracker, students are making an effort in their work, different things like that, just how the students are, responding to you. So we've got there about, you know, understanding the homework system, the consequences. Maybe they'll get a post-it note removed, some time off their golden time if they don't complete it in time. So just making sure that you are showing that your pupils know what's expected of them within your classroom. And then just take us on then to the salaries. So in Scotland, it works on a main pay scale salary, and that just of course ranges on your teaching experience, and it goes from your probation years at 0.0 up to 0.5. And these salaries are kind of forever changing, but approximately you're looking at for 0.0, it's 32,217, and then up at 0.5, it's 48,516, and that's of course when you hit max 6, and that's maybe when, you know, if you're getting any additional responsibilities of a head of department or any kind of things like that, a TLR would then also be added. Whereas then in England, it's actually going up as well by 6.5%. So as again, salaries are always changing, but that ranges on a main pay scale from M1 up to M6, and that goes from roughly about 28,000, it can go right up to 53,482. And that is because England also operate in kind of geographical. So they have the standard main pay scales, they have the fringes of London, outer London and inner London, and it's just basically the closer you get to the centre of London, the higher the salaries are, and that is just to counteract the cost of living, because it can be quite expensive to live in the centre of London. But, you know, as it says there, working through us, we do give an extra £3,000 that can help with your relocation and different things like that. And then for the UAE, like I mentioned earlier, salaries will depend on which school you're working for, but usually what we do see is about £2,500 monthly salary, and that is tax-free. So that's kind of the bottom line that you get every month, and that includes your flights, accommodation, sometimes utility bills, and again, as I mentioned, the 2 school admissions for children if you have any. And what I would say about the UAE is it's very hard working, but it is very rewarding if it's something that you want to do. And if you do want to move away and live that lifestyle, it definitely is worth doing. Okay. So then I'm just going to take us on here. This is just a little video from one of our year teachers, Rachel. I'll just let her do the talking for you.
Hi everyone, my name is Rachel Rubin and I am from Thunder Bay, Ontario, Canada. I recently graduated from the education program at Lakehead University in my hometown. And during my last year of education, I actually got to complete international placement with Uteach at a school in London, England. I absolutely fell in love with it, and I decided it is where I wanted to start my teaching career. So I now have a job at St. Anthony's Catholic Primary School here in London, teaching year 4. I couldn't have done it without help and support from Uteach and the team. I got lots of help with the interview process, as well as Eva's always there to answer any questions that I have, and it made me feel super comfortable moving over here. I'm fitting in very well with my school, and I've been here for a month. I have a new flat, still exploring everything London has to offer, but I'm just so grateful that I have this opportunity.
Okay, so that's a wee bit from Rachel, and then I'll just stop sharing my screen just now if you want to do some of the question and answers. And I think Richard's on here as well. So Richard's going to talk to us a bit about, you know, being a teacher here in England. Hi Richard, how are you?
Hi Richard, welcome. Happy World Teachers Day.
Okay, good morning. Can everyone hear me okay? Have I got the audio sorted correctly?
Yeah, I can hear you good. I could like the classroom.
I hope that's fine. Okay, so, well, that was a fantastic presentation. Certainly there's no swimming pool at my school, so I didn't have to ask about that. Now, I'm a little bit different insofar as I've had 16 years experience abroad, almost all in China. So the last part about UAE, I'd say the similar salaries after tax in Asia as well. And in my own personal experience, it's a little bit more fun in Asia than it is in the UAE. However, let me talk you through a little bit about my experience, what happened with regards to Uteach, how I came to be placed at this school. So initially, I looked for several jobs myself, several teaching positions myself. And the problem you've got, or the problem that I found, is how do you select a school? How do you look at more in-depth background research. I mean, obviously you can go through the website as Ava mentioned, but there's a lot of things that just aren't on that website, or often that website's the best case scenario, like what the school wants to project rather than the actual information. So I think that's really one of the strong points of Uteach, that they know and have connections across the whole of the UK and Scotland. I don't know if it's independent yet, but and Scotland as well. And I suppose that gives you a bit more of confidence, maybe security, maybe a bit more background information when you enter a new place. You actually know more than the school than what's being said on the website. So I found that reassuring. I think there's an element really of, or certainly I felt, that you're being supported in your new position more so than just the school. So whilst you'd obviously have any kind of onboarding, and you go through the CPD, the professional development, continuous professional development, there's a kind of feeling that there's someone else that's got your back, someone else that's you can reach out for questions, reach out for advice, that can give you guidance, and I found that quite useful. I found that quite useful indeed. So really, I mean, and I don't want to sound like an advert for you teachers. Unfortunately, I'm not getting paid for this. I think this is volunteer work. But no, it's certainly been a great experience. It's certainly been something that I felt a bit more confident. Someone who's at the end of the phone can reach out and kind of ask those questions that I might not want to ask to the school. And it's like you've got someone fighting your corner. So that's kind of my experience with Uteach. I'm open to any questions from any of the other participants. So please, I don't know if I can lower my hand with what I'm doing. I'll try. I don't know if I'm an advanced Zoom user. Okay, I think I've just I've raised it again. Well, there you go. Right. Okay. So now that I've put my hand down, please jump in with any questions you may have.
That's great. Thank you very much. Both have been very insightful, about the process, what to expect, even the salaries and interview questions and things like that. So I thought somebody had their hand up, if I remember, or did they lowered their hand? Okay, do you have any questions, students?
I've got quite a specific question, and I'm not sure if it's relevant at all, but I'm studying bioscience and zoology at the minute. And I'm looking to go into teaching secondary biology. Is it possible that because I've studied something besides from just purely biology, that I would have to take like a supplement course before I was qualified for teaching biology?
I would say in terms of Scotland, possibly you might need to, but for England they're a lot more laid back, as I mentioned. So if you do have your degree just now, and then you go on to your PGDE, you'll then be able to be qualified enough to go down to England and teach it down there. Is England something that you were considering? Are you in Scotland and want to stay in Scotland?
I was thinking about moving further away from Scotland, so that wouldn't be a problem, yeah.
Yeah, well, definitely, it's a lot easier, the recruitment process in England, and they have a lot more, kind of control over the recruitment and things. In Scotland, it's a lot done by the governments and the local authorities, whereas in England, we put you forward, and if you've got your PGCE or PGDE, then you're qualified to teach in that subject that you have. So, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Jordan, and there's another event coming up for PGDE courses. I'm talking about the entry requirements. And so if you go to our website where you booked this event, there is an event coming up, Get Into Teaching event. So we will have exactly those academics who filter the applications, and they will give advice. But I would think that depending on what modules you've done and credits you've covered, you might be okay. But go to that event and check, and also email them directly to see what kind of modules you have covered already and if they would be eligible as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so Richard, where did you do your qualification?
So initially, I've been in education for 16 years, and I've opened and led international schools in China. So I've actually been a head teacher on the other side of the world. Unfortunately, my Chinese qualifications are practically worthless in the UK. So I am very much a QTS assessment only. Ava, have I got that right? So I'm
yeah. You'll be starting in January.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'm one level above the cleaning staff is how to describe my position. But yeah, I am QTS assessment only. So whilst I've had obviously over a decade and a half of teaching experience in the UK, I have to redo those qualifications. QTS is qualifying teacher status as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, too many acronyms in education, I tell you.
Definitely is.
That's great, thank you. And also I noticed that there might be international students who qualified abroad in different countries, but who has been, teacher, for example. In that kind of situations, do you work with them, or what kind of advice would you give?
Yeah, definitely. So they can actually, some countries are eligible to apply for QTS before they've even came to the UK. So definitely there's a website on the government that you can see if you're eligible to apply for QTS online. And if you are eligible, I definitely would recommend applying for it, because having QTS, it does open you up to a whole host of things, not just opportunities and promotions within your post, but also higher salaries and things like that once you do have your QTS. So definitely checking if you are eligible, and if you are, apply. If you aren't eligible, we can do what we're doing with Richard, and it's an assessment only route. We actually work with Colchester Teacher Training Consortium, and what it is you would have 2 observations. They will come watch your class teach, and they'll rate you, and you've got to score either good or outstanding on both of those observations in order to pass. You also have to make a portfolio of some of your references, some of your lesson plans and things like that in there too. But with your school, that's why with Richard and other teachers as well, we wouldn't start your assessment only route in September when the teacher starts, because you're just new to a brand new school. It would be unfair to ask you then to be observed and things. So we would start you off in September if it is England, or August if it's Scotland, and then we would wait until the January, once you're settled, once you know your classes and you're familiar and comfortable, and then we would start your assessment only route then, and you usually have it within 10 weeks. You can then get your QTS.
That's great. Richard, do you want to add anything?
Yeah.
To that, no. It's great that it starts in January. I think that's fantastic, especially my situation transferring culturally has been a big thing. Obviously, there's varying attitudes to education around the world. And getting used to the UK system, certainly the safeguarding procedures, getting trained on all the kind of keeping children safe in education and all the rest of it has taken up quite a lot of my first month here in the UK. So no, I wouldn't add a great deal to that. I think starting in January, it gives you the time, the observations, the lesson plans. I mean, it's things that you used to do right at the start of your teaching career, and then perhaps when you're in your second decade, it's kind of a bit more in your head. So it's kind of pulling it out and putting it on paper. But no, I think Eva covered that topic quite succinctly.
Good. Did anybody else have any questions?
Okay, and so I guess this topic would be covered by getting to teaching one. But Richard, did you train in something else before, or what?
Apologies, I was drinking some cold coffee. Yes, so I'm a business teacher. My original degree was in business and management, and last year I was at Cambridge University and I did a 1-year master's in educational leadership. So I am very much, hopefully, he says, fingers crossed, on the fast track back to SLT. Whilst it's been great to be back in the classroom as much, needless to say, I want want to move back into my own office. He says, I don't know if that's the right reason to be wanting SLT, but still, there you go. So yeah, I'm a little bit different in terms of what I studied before, because I was at Cambridge last year.
Okay, so when you say SLT, is it senior
leadership team? Yeah, middle management or well, senior management.
Yeah.
So obviously those positions. Yeah, sorry to cut you off. Those positions start as head of department, head of year, HOD, HOY, then move up onto assistant head, then finally deputy head and head teacher, and then obviously above that being executive head teacher that manages multiple schools, and that'd be multiple site management experience. So
is that what you're going for soon, Richard?
It is indeed. It might be another few years yet, but we'll see. I've certainly got the suits for it. Anyway, no, sorry. Yeah. What's the anything else? Any other questions? Sorry, Uganda.
Yeah, that's okay. That's great. Thank you. So we have a student asking, like, Masters in Education Studies. Would that be possible to teach with that kind of qualifications, or is teaching qualification necessary, basically?
I'm going to have to refer you to the lady below me. I don't know if she's below everyone else, but where I think that's the better expert to talk to in this regard. So
in Scotland, you would have to have either a 4 years Bachelor's of Education degree or Bachelor of Education, or you would have to have, you know, like me, for example, a 4-year degree in business and then go on and do a 1-year PGDE. But in Scotland, if you do, in England, sorry, if you do have 2 years teaching experience in another country and you did qualify in another country, you are then able to teach in England.
Okay, that's great. I hope that question was answered from that London student. Even though you are a University of the West of Scotland, but also in London campus, you're in England, so you would be able to teach in England, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
That's great. So maybe you can get in touch with Eva, and yeah.
Definitely, I'll put my email address in here if anyone wants to contact me after this with any questions, or, you know, maybe to schedule a one-on-one call or something if they want to look at recruitment and things like that as well. Just reach out to anything. I love a question.
That's great. So Eva's email address is eva@uteachrecruitment.com. Those who might not be seeing it, or if you are watching it afterwards on YouTube.
Okay. Anybody else?
Anybody else? Okay, let's have a look at the time. So I think we are coming to the end of our session. So would you like to add anything else, Richard and Eva?
I'm going to have to go first because I've got lunchtime duty. So it's been a pleasure speaking to you all. If anyone does have any questions, obviously email the lady below me. I can't recommend Uteach highly enough. Have yourselves a great evening. You've chosen the right career by becoming a teacher. I will speak to you all later. Bye-bye now.
Richard. Bye.
Thank you, Richard. Bye.
Okay, good. The last thing I just want to add is just to say, just as I said there, my email address is there. If you do want to contact us about anything, please do feel free to email me. I always welcome any advice, anything like that you do have. Okay.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Eva. And thank you very much, all the students who joined today, and good luck with your teaching career journey, if you're thinking about it, or if you're qualified already, so you know what the paths are. It's more flexible in England, and in Scotland there might be some entry requirements that you need to check, and you might be okay. And there is another event coming up, Get Into Teaching, if you're thinking about you know, training at UWS as well. So just go to the careers website where you booked this event, and there are lots of other events coming up. And if you want to see a careers advisor one-to-one, also you can book appointments there as well. And I'm happy to speak to you there. That's great. Thanks very much. See you next time.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.